Today, the front door for a highly sophisticated hacker to breach your entire corporate ecosystem might not be some critical server. It could literally be that innocent-looking smart printer sitting quietly in the corner of your remote office. So, today we're going to unpack exactly how our digital boundaries have completely transformed, and more importantly, how we build modern endpoint security to actually achieve proactive resilience.
We'll cover 1. The modern endpoint foundation. 2. Why endpoint security matters. 3. The evolution into security platforms. 4. Core platform capabilities. 5. AI and zero trust. And finally, 6. Proactive endpoint resilience.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the modern endpoint foundation, redefining the perimeter. Because before we can even attempt to secure our environment, we have to completely change how we think about the boundary of our enterprise.
So, I want to ask you this directly. What exactly is an endpoint in your mind? If you're picturing just a beige desktop computer sitting under a cubicle desk, or maybe a standard issue company laptop, we need to completely shatter that assumption right now.
Our modern definition goes way beyond desktops and laptops. We're talking smartphones, tablets, physical and virtual servers. And then we get into the really tricky stuff. Office printers, network-connected security cameras, smart thermostats, and just an endless sea of IoT technologies. Every single item here is a device that connects to a network and can serve as a gateway for cyber threats. And here's the terrifying part about this. Each one of these devices sits dangerously close to your users, your credentials, and your highly sensitive business data. This massive explosion of devices has completely blown up the modern attack surface.
Which brings us to Section 2, why endpoint security matters, the death of the perimeter. We know the sheer volume of devices has skyrocketed, but let's look at why this specifically changes the entire game for enterprise security.
The shift in how we work is just staggering. The old way was a traditional castle approach. You had a trusted internal network, and you built a giant, strong perimeter moat around it with firewalls. But look at the modern environment. Your employees are working remotely, applications live up in the cloud, and devices are connecting from coffee shops and living rooms completely outside that old corporate moat. We've moved from a heavily protected castle to a sprawling, borderless city. And in this new city, every single endpoint has to be treated as a major security asset because every device is right on the front lines.
And here is why those front lines are so critical. This compromise chain happens in the blink of an eye. Step 1, an attacker uses just one weak endpoint to establish a foothold. Step 2, they steal credentials and escalate their privileges. Step 3, they use those privileges to move laterally through your entire network. And Step 4, boom, they deploy ransomware and exfiltrate your sensitive data. A single compromised endpoint, literally just one, can lead to devastating operational disruption, regulatory nightmares, and massive financial losses.
So we had to adapt. Section 3, evolution into security platforms, adapting to the threat. Because threats evolved to easily bypass those simple, old-school defenses. Our tools had to fundamentally transform from isolated little applications into comprehensive, intelligent platforms.
Let's trace how these defenses actually built up over time. Generation 1 was traditional antivirus. It only looked for known malware signatures, which is basically a digital wanted poster. Generation 2 evolved into EPP, or Endpoint Protection Platforms, which combined AV with firewalls and application control to try and stop threats before they even executed. But, of course, attackers got smarter. So we moved to Generation 3, EDR, Endpoint Detection and Response. This was a massive leap. We shifted from merely preventing known files to continuously monitoring endpoint behavior to catch really tricky, fileless attacks. And finally, Generation 4, XDR, Extended Detection and Response. XDR doesn't just stare at the endpoint, it correlates data across the network, your email, and the cloud. We've essentially gone from a simple deadbolt on the front door to a fully integrated, omnipresent security system. And hey, don't just take my word for it. Look at this guidance directly from CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They define EDR by its ability to continuously monitor activity and detect suspicious behavior. Government agencies now consider this level of continuous monitoring and automated response an absolute, non-negotiable necessity. Asking, is this file bad, just isn't enough anymore. You have to ask, is this device behaving badly? Let's unpack how that actually looks in practice. Section 4, Core Platform Capabilities, Layers of Defense. What are the specific layers that make up these modern platforms? It is all about security in depth, overlapping layers of defense.
At the core, you have next-gen AV, using machine learning to catch unknown threats. You have EDR collecting telemetry and automatically isolating infected machines. Application control ensures only trusted, allow-listed software can run, while device control physically restricts things like unauthorized USB drives. Then, data loss prevention monitors where your sensitive data is flowing, and encryption ensures that even if a laptop is left in a taxi, the data remains totally unreadable. This step is absolutely crucial. If an attacker somehow bypasses one control, they're going to immediately slam face first into another one.
Moving right along to Section 5, AI and Zero Trust, the modern security engine. What's really fascinating about this current evolution is how we power these platforms. We aren't just relying on human speed anymore, we're using modern principles supercharged by machine intelligence. Literally everything modern endpoint security does is grounded in this concept of zero trust. As recommended by Nest, zero trust means you never, ever automatically trust a user or device just because they successfully logged into the network. Think about it. A device that has out-of-date software, disabled security controls, or is acting a little weird absolutely shouldn't get the same access as a perfectly healthy, compliant device. Trust has to be earned continuously, every single second. It is never granted by default. And to enforce that trust, we use techniques like microsegmentation. By separating your network's resources into much smaller security zones, you dramatically reduce the blast radius if an endpoint does get compromised. I like to think of it like the watertight compartments on a submarine, or stopping a fire from spreading from one single room to the rest of a giant skyscraper. If an attacker gets in, they aren't sinking the whole ship. They're trapped in that one tiny segment.
But obviously, we don't just want to trap attackers, we want to stop them from getting in at all. Enter Autonomous Endpoint Management, or AEM. This is a massive game changer, shifting us from reactive alerts to truly proactive management. AEM uses real-time data and AI to automatically patch software and address vulnerabilities before an attacker can even attempt to exploit them. It analyzes deviations from a device's normal baseline and handles issues at machine speed, literally long before a human analyst has even poured their morning coffee.
And finally, Section 6, Proactive Endpoint Resilience, the continuous cycle. How do all of these amazing tools actually weave together to create a resilient, self-healing security environment?
The secret sauce here is integration. Endpoint platforms don't exist in a vacuum. They forward telemetry to SIM platforms, acting as your central brain for all security data. They correlate signals across the entire network using XDR. They automate response workflows using SOAR technologies to act on threats without human intervention. And they map adversary behavior against the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is essentially the global encyclopedia of known hacker tactics. This integration is what finally allows security teams to stop playing a stressful game of whack-a-mole with isolated alerts and start investigating and shutting down actual, broader attack sequences as they happen.
Ultimately, all of this feeds into this framework, the continuous resilience cycle. You discover your endpoints, assess their vulnerabilities, protect the devices, monitor their behavior, detect the anomalies, and respond and recover. Endpoint management is no longer this periodic IT chore where you just click update once a month. It is a continuous, living, breathing security discipline.
Which leaves us with this final thought to consider. When endpoint protection is deeply integrated with your network, your identity, and your cloud operations, the very nature of your devices changes. So I'll ask you this. Are your endpoints just potential weaknesses waiting to be exploited? Or, by using these modern AI-driven platforms, have you actually turned them into valuable security sensors that actively drive your organization's proactive resilience?